The summer Amara turned 73. The mulberry tree in her backyard rained fruit. It was not a gentle, poetic rainfall, but a heavy, insistent splatter that stained the old flagstones purple and attracted a persistent, buzzing cloud of wasps. Amara watched the carnage from her kitchen window, a chipped world's best grandma mug warming her hands. Inside, the silence was a presence, as familiar and worn as the floral armchair her husband, Leo, had died in 2 years prior. Outside, the tree he'd planted as a sapling 40 years ago was having a violent fianta tantrum. The doorbell rang, a sound so foreign it made her jump. Through the frosted glass, she saw a silhouette that was at once utterly strange and intimately known. When she opened the door, the world tilted on its axis. "Hello, Amora." It was Serena, her sister, not the girl of 17 she'd last seen, fleeing their father's house in a haze of tears and recrimination, but a woman of 70, the same wide Slavic cheekbones now mapped with fine lines, the same two large honey-brown eyes, though now framed by the wrinkles of a lifetime of squinting into different suns. Her hair, once as dark as Amara's own, now a steely gray, was a careful, frosty blonde. She wore a linen trouser suit, elegant and out of place on Amara's dusty porch. 53 years, half a century of silence bridged by 2 words. Amara did not faint. She did not scream. She simply stood, the mug heavy in her hand, and said, "You're late." A ghost of their old wry smile touched Serena's lips. The flight from Nice was delayed. They sat in the kitchen, the mulberries bleeding onto the patio behind them. The air was thick with the sweet, cloying smell of rotting fruit and unspoken history. Serena spoke in careful, edited highlights: a life in the south of France, a career in art restoration, a short, childless marriage that ended in a quiet divorce. She was retired. She was, she said, between places. "And you?" Serena asked, her eyes tracing the sun-faded photograph on the windowsill. Amara and Leo on their 40th anniversary, his arm around her, both of them squinting happily into the camera. "Leo? Gone," Amara said, the word still a stone in her throat. 2 years. A stroke. Very peaceful, it hadn't been, but one did not share such intimacies with strangers, even sister-shaped ones. Serena's gaze lingered on Leo's face. He had kind eyes. "In the pictures you sent, Mother." Amara had forgotten she'd sent those early on, a desperate olive branch. "He was kind," she said, her voice tight. "He was the kindest man." A silence stretched, filled only by the drone of wasps. "Why are you here, Rena?" Amara used the old childhood name, a weapon and a plea. Serena looked down at her hands, at the elegant silver ring on her right hand. "I am tired of being between places. I thought, perhaps this could be a place, for a little while." Amara's first instinct was a vehement, visceral no. Her house was a shrine to the life she had built without Serena. A life with Leo? Letting her in felt like a desecration. But beneath the anger, worn smooth by time, was the bedrock of an older love and a terrifying, yawning loneliness. The mulberries continued their morbid applause against the glass. "The guest room has a damp spot," Amara said finally, not looking at her. "But the bed is made." Serena moved in with 2 sleek suitcases and a smell of jasmine perfume that slowly infiltrated, the house's scent of lemon polish, and old books. Her presence was a quiet earthquake. She rearranged the cutlery drawer for logic, she replaced Amara's sturdy tea bags with loose leaf, Earl Grey from a chic tin. She deadheaded the roses Leo had planted with a ruthless efficiency that felt like criticism. Amara watched, a simmering pot of resentment. They spoke in polite, brittle exchanges, navigating around the mountain of the past. They talked of the weather, of the aggressive mulberry tree, of the bland dramas of Amara's weekly bridge club. They did not talk of their father, a stern and disappointed patriarch. They did not talk of their mother, whose heart had been a small, confined space. Unable to hold two headstrong daughters at once, they absolutely did not talk of the boy, Stefan, or the shattered summer of 1971 that had broken them apart. Amara's sanctuary was her memories of Leo. She would sit in his study, now dusty, and run her fingers over the spines of his history books. She'd hold his old cardigan, the gray one, to her face, but its scent of hymn-pipe, tobacco, and peppermint had long since faded. She'd talk to him in her head. "You wouldn't believe it, Leo. She's here. After all this time. She's making quiche. Who does she think she is?" One afternoon, a week into the uneasy truce, Amara found Serena in the study. She wasn't tidying, but standing perfectly still, looking at the wall of photographs. She was focused on one in particular, Leo and Amara in their late 20s, on a hiking trip in the Lake District. Leo was caught mid-laugh, head thrown back, his hand pointing at something beyond the frame. He was all vitality and joy. He laughed with his whole body, Serena said softly, not turning around. Amara flinched. Yes, it must have been a very happy life. There was no jealousy in Serena's voice, only a deep, wistful curiosity, as if observing a rare and beautiful species from behind glass. "It was," Amara said defensively. "It was our life." Serena finally turned. Her eyes were bright. "I'm glad, Mara. Truly, we deserved a happy life." The use of her own childhood nickname disarmed Amara completely. She had no retort. She just stood there, holding a duster like a scepter, feeling ancient and foolish. That evening, for the first time, they shared a bottle of wine. The silence was less brittle, more thoughtful. "Did he know?" Serena asked, swirling the Pinot Noir. "About everything?" Amara took a long sip. "I told him before we married. I couldn't not." "What did he say?" Amara closed her eyes, transported back to Leo's small, book-crammed flat. The smell of burnt toast from his failed attempt at a romantic dinner. She had told him the whole ugly story, her fierce, competitive love for her vibrant younger sister. The summer she'd brought home Stefan, the brooding, beautiful art student she'd met at college. How Serena, just 17, had fallen for him with the devastating intensity of first love. The stolen kisses Amara had witnessed from the hallway, the final, terrible row where everything had been, said accusations of betrayal, of coldness, of stealing light and air. She had told him how Serena and Stefan had left together, and how Stefan had left Serena alone in Marseille a mere 6 months later. She opened her eyes. "He held my hands. And he said, 'The heart is not a pie, Amara. It doesn't have limited slices.' Her loving him didn't mean she loved you less. And his being a fool doesn't mean your love for her has to end." Amara's voice cracked. "He was always wiser than me." Serena wept then, silent tears cutting through her careful makeup. It was the first crack in the dam. The thaw was gradual, like the slow retreat of a stubborn frost. They began to talk in fragments, pieces of their lives laid out like mosaics with missing tiles. Serena spoke of the loneliness of France, of the hollow satisfaction of perfectly restoring a renaissance. Madonna, while her own life felt flaked and fragmented, Amara spoke of the profound, quiet joy of her marriage and the different, sharper loneliness that had followed Leo's death. One day, sorting through the attic for a spare quilt, they found a box of their father's things. Buried beneath old ledgers and faded ties was a bundle of letters, tied with a blue ribbon, their mother's handwriting. They were written to a sister in Bucharest, letters never sent. In them, their mother spoke of her girls of Amara's fierce intelligence and stubborn pride, of Serena's artistic soul and reckless heart. "My two jewels," she wrote, "but they sharpen themselves against each other. I fear they will cut themselves to pieces." Sitting on the dusty attic floorboards, surrounded by the detritus of a family that had never learned how to love softly, the sisters wept together. The last of the ice melted in those shared, salty tears. It was after this that Amara began to share Leo properly, not as her sole property, but as the wonderful man he was. She told stories of his terrible puns, his passion for obscure Roman battle tactics, his quiet, steadfast way of loving her through miscarriage and career, disappointment and the slow creep of age. She showed Serena his woodworking shop, still untouched, and explained how he'd made their bed, the kitchen table, the picture frames that held their life. Serena listened, a hungry and attentive student. She began to ask questions. What was his favorite book? Did he sing in the shower? What made him angriest? Through Amara's answers, a portrait of Leo emerged for Serena that was vibrant and three-dimensional. He was no longer just Amara's husband, a figure from a rival's camp. He became Leo, a man who loved Dylan Thomas and diesel engines, who cried at animal rescue documentaries, who was terrified of moths. And in this sharing, something in Amara shifted too. Her grief, which had been a cold, private stone in her chest, began to warm and unfold. Remembering him for Serena was different from remembering him alone. It brought out new colors, long-forgotten anecdotes. It was a resurrection of sorts. One balmy evening, as they sat under the now less fecund mulberry tree, Serena said, "He feels so alive when you talk about him. It's like he's right here." "Sometimes," Amara said, "he feels more gone than ever. And at other times, like now, it's as if he's just in the other room." Serena reached across the wrought iron, table and covered, Amara's hand with her own. It was the first voluntary touch since Serena's arrival. "Thank you," Serena said, her voice thick, "for letting me meet him." Amara turned her hand over and squeezed. No words were needed. The summer deepened, and with it an unexpected contentment. They fell into a gentle rhythm. Amara taught Serena how to make Leo's favorite beef stew. Serena taught Amara how to paint with watercolors, capturing the lazy light on the garden. They bickered over crossword clues and collaborated on jigsaw puzzles. They watched old films, and Serena would critique the set design while Amara analyzed the historical inaccuracies. Amara began to notice things, how Serena's laughter, when it finally came freely, was still the same infectious cascade she remembered from childhood, how her sister looked at her sometimes with a mixture of awe and regret, how her own heart, so long clenched like a fist, was slowly opening, and she noticed something else, something that first whispered at the edges of her consciousness before announcing itself with undeniable clarity. It was a flutter deep in her belly, a ridiculous, impossible flutter. She was 73. She was years past menopause. She put it down to indigestion, to nostalgia, to the strange new stresses and joys of Serena's presence. But it persisted, a soft, fluttering sensation like a trapped moth. Then came the nausea, not fierce like in her first, long ago pregnancy, but a persistent, rolling unease in the mornings. Her breasts felt tender, her sense of smell became preternaturally sharp. She found herself exhausted by mid-afternoon, craving strawberries and sharp cheddar cheese together. One morning, standing in front of the bathroom mirror after a particularly violent bout of dizziness, she caught her own reflection. Her hand instinctively went to her lower abdomen, which bore only the soft, familiar curve of age. But the look in her own eyes was one she hadn't seen in over 40 years. A bewildered, terrified recognition. "No," she whispered to the empty house. "It's not possible." But a wild, traitorous hope, long buried and fossilized, cracked open inside her. She had been pregnant twice before Leo died, two little souls who had come too early and stayed only briefly, leaving behind a silence that had never been filled. Leo had held her through both losses, his own sorrow a deep, quiet river beside her crashing ocean of grief. They had chosen not to try the turbulent waters of fertility treatments or adoption. Their love had been enough, they told each other. It had to be. And now, this. An impossibility. She told no one, not even Serena. She wrapped the secret around herself like a cloak, half convinced she was going, mad with grief and late-in-life sisterly reconciliation. She bought a home pregnancy test, hiding it at the bottom of her shopping bag like a teenager. She stared at it for a week, unopened, a totem of absurdity. Finally, on a day when Serena was at a gallery in the city, Amara locked the bathroom door. Her hands shook as she read the instructions, the print blurring. The wait was an eternity. When she looked, two clear pink lines stared back at her. The world did not so much tilt as dissolve. She slid down the wall onto the cool tiles, the plastic stick clutched in her hand. She laughed, a dry, desperate sound that turned into a sob. She thought of Leo. His joy would have been boundless, terrifying. His worry for her, profound. She could almost hear his voice, steady and calm beneath the shock. "All right, my love. All right, we'll work it out. We always do." But he wasn't here. There was no we. There was only her, an old woman with a miraculously young secret growing inside her. The first person she had to tell, the only person she could tell, was Serena. She waited until that evening. They were in the garden under a sky streaked with peach and violet. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Rena," she began, her voice unnaturally calm. "I have something to tell you. Something unbelievable." Serena put down her book, immediately attentive. "What is it? Are you ill?" Fear flashed in her eyes. "No, not ill." Amara took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, ridiculous and immense. Serena stared. She blinked. A series of expressions flitted across her face. Confusion, concern, a dawning horror that her sister had lost her mind. Then she saw the absolute terrified certainty in Amara's eyes. "Oh my God," Serena breathed. "Amara, how?" "I don't know," Amara cried, the composure breaking. "I'm 73. It's a medical impossibility. I thought I was going mad, but I did a test. 3 tests. It's real, but there's no one?" Serena's question trailed off, tactful and bewildered. "Of course there's no one," Amara said, a hint of their old irritation flashing. "There's only been Leo. There will only ever be Leo." The implication settled between them, heavy and sacred. A ghost had fathered a child. Serena was out of her chair and kneeling before Amara in an instant, taking her trembling hands. "A miracle," she whispered, her eyes wide. "A late, impossible miracle. Or a catastrophe," Amara said weakly. "What do I do?" "What will people say?" "What will it be?" "You will have it," Serena said, and her voice held a ferocity Amara had never heard before. It was the sound of a woman who had spent a lifetime with empty arms, facing the prospect of a child entering her world, however unconventionally. "And I will be here. Every step. We will do this together." The "we" was a life raft. Amara clung to it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of clandestine doctors' visits, hushed conversations, and mind-bending medical astonishment. Amara's GP, Dr. Evans, a pragmatic woman in her 50s, had initially insisted the tests were wrong, a hormonal anomaly, but the blood work and finally the ultrasound confirmed it. A single, healthy gestational sac. A tiny, flickering heartbeat. "Medically, I have no explanation," Dr. Evans said, staring at the screen in awe. "Your ovarian function was negligible. The chances are incalculable." "It's like a flower blooming from stone, Amara. A mulberry tree raining fruit," Amara murmured, thinking of the violent, fertile summer that had heralded this change. The pregnancy was classified as geriatric in the most extreme sense, and higher risk didn't begin to cover it. A team of specialists was assembled: cardiologist, endocrinologist, a world-renowned maternal-fetal medicine expert brought in from London. Amara became a medical marvel, a case study. She submitted to the poking and prodding with a surreal detachment. Through it all, Serena was her rock, her advocate, her confidant. She attended every appointment, asked pointed questions, took meticulous notes. She researched advanced maternal age pregnancy obsessively. She cooked nutrient-dense meals, gently steered Amara away from heavy lifting, and held her hair back during morning sickness. Their roles subtly reversed. Amara, always the capable, settled older sister, was now the vulnerable one, subject to the whims of her own miraculous body. Serena, the wandering, restless spirit, became the grounded one, the protector. It healed something fundamental between them. The old competition evaporated, replaced by a symbiotic partnership forged in the fire of this shared, incredible secret. They told no one else. The outside world saw two elderly sisters reconnecting, perhaps with Amara looking a bit tired or gaining a little weight. Their biggest challenge was Amara's small but perceptive social circle. Bridget from Bridge Club squinted at her over the card table one afternoon. "You're looking well, Amara, Rosine. Have you done something new with your hair?" Amara just smiled serenely. "Just enjoying having my sister here, Bridget. It's been a tonic." As her body changed, Amara found herself in a strange dialogue with her past and future. The sensations were familiar, the quickening, the backache, the heartburn, yet the context was surreal. She was a contemporary of great-grandmothers, feeling life stir within her. She talked to the baby constantly in her head, telling it about its father. She poured all her memories of Leo into the silent, growing space between her heart and her womb. One night, she woke from a vivid dream. Leo was in his workshop, sanding a cradle. He looked up and smiled. Not a young man, but as he was in his late 60s, comfortable in his skin. "It's a girl," he said. "She has your stubborn chin. Be gentle with her, Mara, and with yourself." She woke with tears on her pillow and a profound, unshakable certainty. "It's a girl," she told Serena at breakfast. Serena, now well-versed in Amara's intuitive certainty, just nodded. "What shall we call her?" They hadn't dared discuss names. It felt like tempting fate. But now, Amara knew. "Eleonora." Leo for him, Nora for a fresh start. Serena's eyes filled. Eleonora, it's perfect. The pregnancy progressed with a stubborn, steady normality that baffled the doctors. Amara's body, though old, seemed to remember its purpose and rose to the occasion with a fierce, ancestral determination. She felt more alive, more connected to the raw pulse of life than she had in decades. The grief for Leo was still there, but it was now woven through with strands of golden anticipation. At 28 weeks, they decided they could no longer keep the secret, that the truth would soon be visible to even the most unobservant. They called Amara's son David from her first brief marriage in her early 20s, a marriage that had ended before Leo, leaving her with the son who was now a calm, kind architect in his late 40s. David listened in utter silence as his mother explained the impossible. The line crackled with his disbelief. He drove down the next day, his face a mask of concern. But when he saw Amara, the calm radiance that had replaced her grief-induced pallor, and when Serena showed him the ultrasound photo, his practical mind was overruled by his heart. "My God, Mom," he whispered, hugging her gently, his hand hovering over her rounded belly. A little sister. He was instantly protective, shifting into problem-solving mode about logistics, support, and navigating the inevitable media storm. The storm came, of course, once David's wife, a sensible journalist, helped them break the story on their own terms. The world descended. News vans parked outside Mulderry House. "Miracle Granny," headlines screamed from tabloids. Medical ethicists debated on daytime television. They received letters, some reverent, some vile, most simply bursting with wonder. Through the chaos, Serena was Amara's shield. She managed the phone, filtered the mail, and gave terse, elegant no comments to reporters. Inside their bubble, they painted the nursery a soft, buttery yellow. Serena, using skills from her restoration days, meticulously refurbished the cradle Leo had made years ago, the one Amara had never been able to part with. In the quiet moments, their conversations deepened. One evening, as Amara rested on the sofa with her feet in Serena's lap, Serena spoke, her voice barely audible. "You know, all those years ago, with Stefan, it was never about stealing from you, Mara. You were so complete. Even then, you had your plans, your strength. He was a ray of light. I was a moth. I was so sorry. So instantly, terribly sorry." Amara placed a hand on her sister's arm. "I know that now. I think I knew it then, but my pride was so wounded. I needed you to need me, not what I had. I always needed you," Serena said, tears finally falling freely. "I've been lost without my North Star, and I've been static without my wandering star," Amara replied. "You brought the wind back, Rena, even before this." She gestured to her belly, where Eleonora was performing a slow, rolling dance. At 36 weeks, during a routine scan, the specialists grew quiet. The baby was small. Amara's blood pressure, which had been a champion until now, was creeping up. The flower blooming from stone was beginning to strain the ancient bedrock of her body. "We need to deliver," the lead consultant said gently. "Every day she stays inside now is a greater risk to you both." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Amara's bubble of wonder. She looked at Serena, who was holding her hand in a death grip. "Now," Amara whispered. "A cesarean section. Tomorrow morning." The night before the surgery, Amara was admitted for observation. Serena refused to leave. She sat in the uncomfortable vinyl chair beside the bed, holding Amara's hand. They didn't speak much. There was too much to say. "If anything happens," Amara began. "Don't!" Serena cut in, her voice fierce. "You are the strongest person I know. You are doing this. You are meeting your daughter. But if it does, Amara insisted, you must tell her about Leo, every story. Make sure she knows how loved she is, that she was born from a great, unending love. Serena nodded, unable to speak. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against Amara's, a gesture of childhood solidarity. I promise. But you will tell her yourself. The operating theater was bright and cold, a stark contrast to the warm, secret world Amara had inhabited for 8 months. As the anesthetic washed over her, her last thought was not of fear, but of Leo's face the day he planted the mulberry tree. Young and strong, earth on his hands. For our grandchildren, he'd said with a wink. Then, pressure, movement, a strange pulling sensation, and a sound, a cry, not a fragile newborn wail, but a robust, indignant shout. She's here, a masked nurse said, her eyes smiling above her gown. She's perfect. They held up a tiny, furious, purple-red creature, and Amara's world stopped and started anew. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a thatch of dark hair, and a pair of lungs that proclaimed her arrival to the universe. Eleonora. They placed her, swaddled against Amara's cheek. The skin-to-skin contact was electric, a completion of a circuit she thought had been permanently broken. She smelled of newness and destiny. "Hello, little one," Amara breathed. "Your father would have loved you so." In the recovery room, Serena was waiting, pale and anxious. When she saw the tiny bundle in Amara's arms, she sank into the chair beside the bed, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Amara," she wept. "She's here." "Would you like to hold your niece?" Amara asked, her voice weak but full of light. Serena took the baby with the awe of someone receiving a sacred relic. Eleonora had stopped crying and was looking around with unfocused, dark blue eyes. Serena traced a finger down the baby's cheek, her tears falling onto the soft blanket. "Welcome, Eleonora," she whispered. "You have no idea how weighted for you are." The return to Mulberry House was not a quiet affair. David and his family had organized a discreet security presence to manage the lingering press. The house was filled with flowers and casseroles from well-wishers around the globe, but inside a new, fragile peace settled. Amara's recovery was slow. The surgery had taken its toll on her aged body. Serena moved into the role of primary caregiver with the natural, fierce devotion. She changed nappies, prepared bottles Amara's milk had not come, another concession her body could not make, and walked the floors with a colicky. Nora at 3 a.m. she became Auntie Rena, a figure of constant, calm presence. Amara watched her sister bond with her daughter, and her heart swelled with a love so vast it encompassed all the lost years. This was the sister she had missed, not the rival, but the ally, the one who sang Romanian lullabies their mother had forgotten, who could calm Nora with a particular rocking motion, who looked at Amara with shared, exhausted triumph over a successfully sterilized bottle. One afternoon, when Nora was 3 months old, Amara was sitting in Leo's armchair, the baby asleep on her chest. Serena was dozing on the sofa. The late autumn sun slanted through the window, catching the dust motes in the pale down on Nora's head. Amara looked from her daughter's serene face to her sister's sleeping one, lined and gentle in repose. She thought of Leo, of his kindness, his quiet wisdom. The heart is not a pie. He had been right. Her love for Nora was a vast, new continent, and it did not diminish the love for the child she had lost, or for him. And her rediscovered love for Serena, deepened and forged in this extraordinary fire, was its own rich, fertile land. The mulberry tree outside was bare, its fruit long gone, its branches skeletal against the gray sky. It was resting, gathering strength for another season. Amara understood now. The tree's violent fruiting had not been a tantrum, but a last magnificent burst of life before a period of renewal. It had been a herald. She kissed the top of Nora's head, breathing in her sweet, milky scent. She was not just a mother again. She was a grandmother, a sister, a widow, a miracle. She was a woman who had been given a second chance at almost everything motherhood, sisterhood, and the daily, precious wonder of life itself. It was messy, terrifying, exhausting, and more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. In the quiet room, with her past and future breathing softly around her, Amara felt Leo's presence, not as a ghost, but as a foundation, solid and enduring beneath the remarkable, unpredictable, and abundantly loved present. The story wasn't about a grandmother, a husband, a sister, and a pregnancy. It was about love's stubborn, miraculous persistence, its ability to bridge decades, to defy science, to heal old wounds, and to bloom, against all odds, from stone.